To trade or not to trade? That is the question. Hold on. Oh, cool. Butler got traded. Finally. Finally. Jimmy Butler has been traded off of the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's going to be going to Philadelphia to join Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Unfortunately, for Philadelphia, they had to sacrifice Robert Covington, a second-round pick, Jared Bayless, and their really good power forward playmaker, Dario Saric. We finally getting into this Jimmy Butler saga. It looks like Philly and Jimmy Butler are on the same terms in terms of signing a long-term contract and forming a big three. Now, people will say, oh, great, like Philly's going to be really good now. However, we need to talk about their offense because as far as their offense goes, I don't know if this is going to work as perfectly. I mean, at first, there's going to be kinks when you introduce an entirely new player, especially a superstar player of Jimmy Butler's caliber, who definitely does not run the necessary offense of the today. Like, the present day offense versus his offense is kind of a little bit different. Jimmy likes to run like ISOs, but he can play make. But the problem is you have a 6'10" point guard who already does your playmaking. You have a 6'4" point guard who still is trying to find his shot. And you have a big man who can post up but also shoot threes, but has not been shooting them very well. It kind of amalgamated into Philly most likely making this trade, which is why I'm not surprised. I feel like there are some people, like I just got a few texts like, oh my God, Butler to the Sixers? I didn't expect that. But for me, I just kind of saw it coming. Philly definitely didn't want to be stuck in this potential middle. And they were reaching that like kind of peak moment of, do we make a decision on this? Do we fire away on this? And they finally did, because it was kind of getting to the point where the league has kind of figured out the Sixers. And while Embiid is still unstoppable and Ben Simmons is still great, the problem is Ben Simmons doesn't have a jump shot. Markelle Fultz doesn't have a jump shot. And this causes a huge load on Joel Embiid. So when you deal with something like that, you are kind of forced to almost get a superstar. Obviously, they would have probably rather someone who was a shooter, but Butler has a serviceable enough shot. It's just the problem I just foresee is that Philly won't be able to stretch the floor necessarily. However, they do get a proven leader who's definitely caused a lot of drama. It's not really comparable to the Kawhi saga, but it was still pretty annoying to have to deal with. Butler wants to get out. Minnesota doesn't let him go, and then they let him go. Let's go to Minnesota's side. It seems odd that Minnesota was so, stubborn at first. They weren't taking anything outside of like a huge treasure trove of first-round picks, players that can contribute, and future players. It was just odd, and for them to make this deal and the only pick they get is a second-round pick. Yes, they get Dario Saric, who is great and probably will work well with Cat. As far as Minnesota's offense goes, you have now a free Cat, I guess, who's been, stuck under the crushing pressure of Jimmy Butler's antics and his own, reaction to that. His own vibe was not really one that was conducive to winning basketball for the Timberwolves. You have Wiggins, who unfortunately has not, shown a consistent game beyond occasionally scoring really well. And now you add Dario Saric, who's a good playmaker, so he should be able to help that offense get a little juice. He's also probably one of the heartbeats of Philly, is now potentially going to become the heartbeat of Minnesota, because Saric was just so wonderful for them with everything that he did. Robert Covington, great 3-and-D guy who unfortunately was not super consistent with the three-point shot in the playoffs, and then sort of has been just trying to find it again. He has now going to be on the Timberwolves, and they get him long. I want to say they get both of them long term. I have to check when Dario Saric's contract expires, but I'm pretty sure Covington's extension was done around last year, so now it's going to kick in for the Timberwolves. So I think the Timberwolves can stay competitive. They just are going to have to figure out how they're going to run this offense and what players they should keep. Justin Patton is also going to be a part of Philly now since he was sent to Philly. But yeah, for Philly, it's figuring out how to properly put Butler into the offense and integrating him with all the other players and the floor spacing. For Minnesota, a free cat with players that are more role players than players that might dominate the ball. I think as far as seeing who wins this trade, it's pretty much going to come down to Butler actually signing the extension versus just like words of like, yeah, I'm going to sign with Philly. Like we need to actually, it has to happen in 2019 or Philly kind of screwed themselves a little bit. But if that goes through, then that'll be cool for the Sixers. But again, we have to see how they play on the floor together, how that works. As far as Minnesota goes, this is kind of them like saying like, yeah, we're going to be behind Cat, which is the kind of right decision as far as like playing goes. Winners of the trade, we're not really going to get that for another free agency / seeing how Minnesota does. So, yeah, Minnesota finally got rid of Jimmy Butler, and I don't have to hear about how he's almost traded. Somehow Houston's 4 first-round picks didn't win out, but a second-round pick, Darius Sargent, Robert Covington, and Jared Bayless went out. So, come on, Houston, you got to send some more of those second-round picks. Even though, obviously, with Houston, their first-round picks they were probably going to have some kind of trap in them. I just found it funny. So, Philly wins the Jimmy Butler stakes. Let's see how it plays out for the rest of the season. Well, this guy says, if you want to be successful in your employment and gaining better prospects, don't tell your boss they need you. Don't sit out of the days you gotta work. Please go into work. You're not a basketball player. Just want to let you know. It only works for NBA players. I don't know what else to tell you.